Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. Long time no see. I hope you haven't missed me too much. I hope you've been having a fantastic time with Ben, implementing a lot of stuff, getting down deep and heavy into the code. I know that there's been a lot of work that you've needed to do, so well done for continuing through the course. Well done for getting to this point in the course. I wanted to take a moment just to take a breath and have a look at where we are and have a look at where we're going with our prototyping. I've got on the screen here, you can see next to me which side is over there, that side over there. You can see that I've got goals for prototyping. We're going to go through those pretty quickly, and as a challenge for you guys, I'm going to get you to rate where you think you currently are on these goals, and I'll do the same. So the first one of our goals of prototyping is saying, will this idea work? Not quite as relevant for us, or not quite as much of a risk in this project, because we're making an RPG, we're following a pretty tried and true approach to doing that. It's a Diablo style, third person, fixed camera. So there's not a lot of, that's a crazy idea, Rick. No one's going to go for an RPG with a fixed camera. So for us, we think the idea is already pretty solid, and we're basing it upon an existing thought. But for you, you might be doing something crazy in your game. I'm going to have it where the player has to play the game with their eyes closed, and it's just about listening to the game. So whatever it is that you're doing, if you're adapting our game and taking it in a different direction, that's great. And we want to say, have you tested your crazy idea of the game, and will it even work? That's one of our goals for prototyping. Also, to make our pre-production decisions. What I mean by that is things like, what are the rules of our game? How fast can the player run? What are the distances in a level? How many enemies can we have on the screen at once? What is going to be compelling in terms of the amount of leveling up that our player can do and the amount of stats and abilities. So a lot of these things we just won't know until we start implementing features. We're not going to know how our branching dialogue works until we start doing branching dialogue. So some of these things we can't put too much pressure on ourselves, but there's a lot of things at this point to do with our core combat, because that's what we're working on right now, where we need to make decisions where we say, yes, we've decided this will be the way it works for our core combat. So when we start implementing things in production, building out our assets and animation and artwork and cranking through levels and starting to pull all the next layer of the onion in, we need to look back at our prototype and say, have we locked it in? So that's what we're doing in our prototype at the moment. We also need to lock in our art style. So we've looked for a theme for our particular game. We're going for medieval, going for a little bit of run down when things are a little bit crooked. And we've got our art guys that are working on that at the moment as we speak. For you, you might have got there and said, no, I'm not really digging the medieval type thing. I'm just going to go to the asset store. I'm going to pony up $50 or $100 or $0, and I'm going to get an asset pack and bring that into my game. And you might say, I love this asset pack. It's got everything I need, done and dusted. Hey, presto. And the challenge I'd have there is you might have imported models. You might have got assets for the world. But what about your particle effects? And what about your user interface, etc.? So at this stage, you and us, we're prototyping our environment. More than anything else, we're saying user interface will come later. But one of our goals of prototyping is to get as locked down as possible, and hopefully with our art to make a pretty corner. What I mean by that is to have one part in a level where you can run up to it and say, this is what the rest of our game should look like. This is what the assets will look like. This is what the characters will look like. This is what the effects will look like. This is what the lighting will look like. That's a great goal to have. We might not hit it in our indie project. On a big AAA game, you absolutely want to have a pretty corner before you bring 50 artists onto your team and say, right, start cranking in that direction. For us, I think we'll have a mildly attractive corner. How's that? And then also, super important, we've talked about this a ton, create the core game moment so that we can play test it. We can give it to someone and say, here's a game, play it and have fun. And so at the moment in our build, Ben's been doing a lot of great work. You guys have been doing a lot of great work with Ben, but we're not yet at the point where there's much of a game. And as you were saying in his last video, I was giving him a little bit of like, hey man, can you please make that player run for me? Because I want to start making this into a game. And that happens sometimes when you're working through your build and you implement something and something else and something, you get deep into it, and then some jerk like me comes along and says, this game doesn't seem very fun at the moment. You're like, because I'm doing this important stuff. But we're prototyping at the moment. And when you're prototyping, you need to keep making that game playable, keep making it interesting, so we can give it to people, so we can be playing it ourselves, so we can be thinking and talking and running around and saying what if in our game. So that's a big important goal as well. And then through our prototyping phase, we want to have ammunition for marketing. What I mean by that is creating some videos, creating some screenshots, creating some things that we can put out to people and say, hey, I'm looking to make a game. It's all about a young boy going on a quest on a boat, and here's a screenshot of the boy on the boat. Or it's all about a tactical dungeon navigation system where we give you just tiny bits of information. You have to make your way through the dungeon, and it's like I said before, you're playing in the dark and you can't see it. Here's some screenshots, here's a video, here's my idea, what do you think about it? And you're getting good feedback from the community, but you're also doing some marketing. And if you're wanting to do a Kickstarter, at the end of your prototype, it's pretty important that you have something that looks pretty comprehensive, or it looks, comprehensive is the wrong word there. It looks like, if someone looks at it, they're like, that looks interesting, and I believe that they'll be able to do it. I believe they'll be able to make it. If at the end of your prototype, it's just a whole bunch of tech demo, bits and pieces that sort of are cool under the scene, under the hood, but not much, and a couple of assets here and there, it's pretty hard to kickstart that to a Kickstarter because it doesn't look very compelling or interesting. It doesn't look like you've got flow or an experience. Okay, so these are the most prominent goals for our prototyping at the moment, and you guessed it, next up I'm going to ask you guys to rate these for yourself in terms of how you're going. Let me bring up my fancy whiteboard here, and I've scribbled out, and you can see, you guys might have been wondering what I was scribbling with. It's my Wacom drawer, which I think they retail for like $100. I got 30 bucks from eBay. Best purchase I've made recently, so I can scribble things for you guys. Got pretty good fidelity too. I know a couple of people have asked, and I love that you guys are interested. You're like, what microphone do you use? And what's that screen you've been using? How do you draw on that? So every now and again, I like to show you guys, this is what I'm doing. Now, I want you to go through, so pause the video, go through each of these and rate yourself, your project, your game, currently on these different criteria out of 10. 10 meaning fantastic, it's done, it's brilliant, it's exactly what you want it to be. 1 being awful, terrible, poke your eyes out, you haven't done anything on it, you've got no idea. So stop the video, from 1 to 10, rate each of these, write them down, and give yourself a rating. And welcome back, and you guys can see as well what we do when we say pause the video. We sit here and we're like, and then after a little while we say welcome back. So I'm going to go through, hopefully you guys did well with that, I'm going to go through and rate for Ben and I how we are doing at the moment. What color shall I choose here? Let's do a big old red. Okay, will our game idea work? Yeah, you know what, I'm very confident about that. I'm going to give ourselves a 10. Tried and true. We're not really doing anything too risky. Our story, we're going for funny. We have some risks in there, but our overall game idea is going to work. Pre-pro decisions. We've made a few. We're starting to get a feel on how our levels are going to go down. You know what? I don't think we're doing super well on that. We haven't got distances. We haven't got widths of things. I'm going to say we're at a 3. We need to do a bunch more work on that. Art style locked. We've got our art design document, concept document we went through. It's starting to give us a pretty good feel. We're getting some assets coming in. Mikey and his guys are doing some great work there. I'm going to give us a 7 on that. Still some work to do. And, we're going to miss out on some things at the moment, like particle effects. We're not quite at the point where we need to diddle with that too much. Core game moment. Well, our game moment currently, the enemies don't really do much. They run at you. There's a lot of great work underneath. We're right on the cusp of having core game moment. Ben's got some spectacular things that he's going to show you guys in the next couple of videos. I'm going to give us, at the moment, I'm going to be a little bit of a jerk here. I'm going to give us a 4, but in brackets, I'm going to say we are right around the corner from being an 8. We're very close to that. But we're going to do it based upon where we're at the moment. So at the moment, we're a 4. Marketing ammunition, we've got some good, hey, we're making a game, here's a level, here's some assets going in, developer diary type stuff. I'm going to say 5. There's enough for us to say, hey, here's the progress in my game. Not yet enough to say, hey, back my Kickstarter. We're there. So all in all, hopefully you didn't give yourself a whole bunch of ones, that you gave yourself some credit for the work that you've been doing, because you've been doing some great work. I see that we need to put a whole bunch of time in, you and I, in the next couple of videos, we need to start saying what are decisions. Let's start locking some things down. And Ben is going to help you guys have what we identified many videos ago, that we want one guy bonking another guy in the head and saying, haha, we've got combat and hit points. So these things are things that are coming down the pipe very soon. And the reason I'm going through this exercise right now is this is very similar to the conversation and conversations that Ben, myself, and Mike, you've been having recently about, okay, what do we need to do next? Where are we at? What's important? And keep coming up for air and saying, what are we trying to achieve? We're trying to make a prototype with a core game moment so that we can make decisions, so that we can then say, here's the game, let's start cranking on our game, knowing what it is that we're building, at the same time as giving you guys some excellent education on how to create all of the underlying code and underlying problem solving and systems within Unity. Okay, so next video, we're going to be diving back into the engine, back into the level, and I will see you in the next video.